I'm recording.
Okay, great. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's virtual wine tasting for Tipple's Brews and Wine. This is Elizabeth Beaudre, Jeff Beaudre, the owners. Thank you for joining us. Happy Thanksgiving week for everybody. And we have one of my favorite wines to pair with Thanksgiving meals is why we're featuring the wine we are this week. This week we're drinking the lovely Jean-Marc Beaujolais from the Morgon growing region within Beaujolais, and specifically even within Morgon, the Côte de Pie. So they were really drilling down this week. Yeah, that's a lot going on. I wrote woo on my thing. So this is a really great, robust but fruit-driven wine. And it's garnered some incredible points consistently throughout the years. I mean, this vintage, we're talking about 94 points from Robert Parker, 93 points Wine Enthusiast, and they get 93 and 94 points regularly on their Beaujolais. And what's, I think, particularly wonderful about it is Beaujolais, and we'll get into this, it's kind of a combination, it's a mission of Jean-Marc Burgaud to raise the world's understanding of what Beaujolais can be. And we'll get into a little bit about why that is. In the meantime, if you have not already poured yourself a glass, let's get to it. Ours is starting out around 65 degrees tonight, so I gave it a little chill in the fridge for about 30 minutes to get it ready. We'll let it warm up to room temperature in the low 70s as we drink. That beautiful color. Why is Gamay one of my favorite wine pairings for Thanksgiving? I'm glad you asked. So, because it pairs with almost everything. This thing, like they even listed on their website, everything from barbecue to roast chicken. I mean, you're going through the whole gambit of flavors. They tend to be medium to light bodied, fruit forward. These guys actually, they can go from very light bodied to heavier. This is a little heavier extracted region. It is a Beaujolais. What is a Beaujolais? A good question too. All right, we're on it. Beaujolais is the grape utilized is not called Beaujolais. That is the region within France. They use the Gamay grape. So within this region of France and within Beaujolais, it is just almost completely, not entirely, but almost completely Gamay grape wine production. Alcohol content on this guy is 13%. So right up there in the middle. And why don't we skipped over some of my initial slides. So
Okay.
That was me.
It was.
I know. I'm ready to go. I want to drink this wine and then eat a lot of turkey. Okay, so here we have our entry-level one. Like they have it there, barbecue beef to cedar plank salmon even on there. So it's just, it's such a great, versatile wine, but I think friendly and delicious. I hope you guys all agree as we taste through it.
You want the next one?
Yes, please. Okay, so here we are. Right now where we are drinking from, yep, there you go, Beaujolais.
I found it.
So Beaujolais is the southernmost tip of Burgundy. Burgundy is famous for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And then the northern tip of Burgundy is Champagne. So Champagne is a subregion of Burgundy. Beaujolais is a subregion of Burgundy. Huh. And then, of course, it breaks down into the additional subregions that we'll be talking about. And let's jump back. And before we dig deeper into where it is that we've gotten this beautiful vintage, let's talk a little bit about it. Let's dig in. Let's drink, sip, smell.
And almost everyone is muted. So if you want to jump on the mic, you need to unmute yourself. And if you don't know how to do that, it's in the top right hand of, like, if you put it over your picture in the top right hand, you should be able to unmute yourself. So
the first thing I'm getting, which is very normal for this, is the fruit jumping right out of the glass. Almost a black cherry lollipop. And
I was going to say black cherry, but black cherry lollipop
is
even more precise and accurate. Because I knew, I'm like, black cherry mostly.
Right, and you might not want to go there, and you're thinking, I don't know, but it is. There are other, this is a more intense, so it's on the black cherry side. The other ones that are strawberry, it smell like strawberry bubblegum.
Really?
They literally smell like strawberry bubblegum on the way in. So it's yeah, you're not wrong if you're getting a candy quality to this.
But forward, I'm getting that candy quality.
Right.
The fruit forward, not.
Yeah, I agree on the black cherry. That was also like my immediate, like what I jumped to was always just like, oh, this is like cherry or black cherry.
Right. And then you get in on the, when you take your sip on this guy and let it run along your palate, there's so much more going on once you get in there.
I agree with the lollipop because I think it tastes like a Jolly Rancher to me. So
I get that. There's that, when your first sip is still this really big, juicy black cherry on the palate. And then it races across, and some of these the characteristics that come from the terroir begin to come up as well, which it's not just a big fruit bomb. You've got like a licoricey quality. I think take a sip and think about a little bit of a black licorice quality. It's in the mid palate and the finish.
I'm getting it slightly. I'm getting something else though, but I can't put my finger on it. So I'm waiting for you to name it so I can say, that's it. That's what I'm tasting.
There's definitely, in addition to black cherry, there's a plummy quality, which I get more on the back end. Yeah, than on the front. Like it charges in with that cherry and finishes with more of a plummy, stone fruity quality. And there is to me, let me get that again. As it's opening, because ours has not been open that long, it's going to evolve. And this is not all Beaujolais will evolve. Beaujolais has a wide gambit of qualities and styles. This one can actually be aged.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. If it doesn't evolve, then okay, you can't age it, right? That's what you said. Or sometimes that's not true.
Usually, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, usually, yes. But for example, I would say, someone could correct me if you disagree, Jerry especially, I would say generally, I don't taste a lot of difference in, let's say, a nice Riesling from being open for an hour. I don't taste a lot of evolution. I just enjoy it from the beginning through that time, but they can age. Okay. So because of that acidity.
Okay. Oh, that's right. You have said that. Acidity.
Wine enthusiasts said that you should drink it beginning in 2021. And so we're not quite to 2021.
Was that the 18 or the 19? Because the 19 was just reviewed too.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I was trying to learn. I was trying to read something about this wine. And I decided they use a lot of words. And so I think we need a lesson on like wine language, like learn to speak.
That's a good idea, is to throw some literacy in here.
Yeah, we should. So we sound like, like you.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's a good point. What I can do is toward the end, when we cover the rating system, is I can actually start to just cut and paste some of the ratings rather than just, review them myself.
And then we can discuss.
And we can discuss, this is what he said and why. And I think that's a very good point, Jay. And they might even say 2021. So we might be like 3 weeks early. In fact, I could taste
really good,
3 weeks.
Or 5.
Yeah. Is it 5 weeks?
Well, it's November.
No, it's November. It's getting there. It's feeling like it's all rushing like a freight train. There's nothing like retail in the Christmas season.
Can I read something here? It says it wears both fruit and tannins easily in a dark texture that brings out blackberry flavors as well as acidity. Like I have no idea what that actually means.
So it's so what he's saying there is the fruitiness doesn't stand out by itself as kind of obnoxious and having no other qualities to it. And then the tannin, which I hadn't even gotten into, is a good point. The body of this wine, because there is a nice amount of tannin to it, helps to really anchor that fruit and get you to begin tasting some of the other flavors. So those tannins will help. They help with food pairings because they're going to work with some of the more red meat fruit pairings. They really help with that because they cleanse the palate. But they also, because they're cleansing the palate, help your palate transition as the sensory experience of tasting from that big fruit to some of the other things like licorice and maybe some floral components, which I would say there's a really nice complexity to this wine, but it's subtle. Whereas the fruit is not subtle. The complexity in this wine, which does in the end give it, that's why the ratings go up there, is because it's not just fruit. If you really kind of sip it, let it run across your palate, you will experience some differences as you go there, where you get maybe, I would go where some of these wines can be kind of like roses, or I would go with this is more like violets. It doesn't jump out as a very ultra fragrant, but it does have a floral kind of purpley feeling component to it.
And did they say something about leathery in that review too? I'm trying to remember the end of it.
They did.
And I
think I agree with that.
See, but the leather
flavors, it says that a dark texture that brings out blackberry flavors as well as acidity.
Okay. So black.
And it did mention something which reminded me more of what I am experiencing is more what they call fruit leather.
Okay.
So fruit leather is the fruit skin. So you get this feeling a little bit of, if you're eating a red grape and you get past the pulp and the juice of it, and if you just have the skin left on your palate, it's not sweet. It's got that kind of almost a fruity, herby quality.
Okay.
And that to me is the description of fruit leather, which is its skins, the fruit leather, its skins.
Yeah, it might be the herbaliness, because I leaned over to Robin earlier and I was like, I was thinking it's like, like a dried leaves or leather or something else like that. I couldn't quite put my finger on, but maybe that's what it is. That kind of like herbaliness.
I feel like I'm getting
like tea. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So right now that it's opening.
Yeah, I feel like I'm getting some earthiness, and theirs has been open for a while. I bet the dials.
Probably. Maybe half hour.
Half hour probably.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So let me put an image in your mind for the type of earthiness you're tasting. I think, and there's a red clay.
Definitely clay, not black soil.
Right. It's not a deep rich. It's more of like a red clay, and that is because of the soil, which we'll go into exactly what soil that is. So I'm really excited that you guys are getting this. Now, this one to me is more of that. Like I said, we've covered black cherry. It says it can have smoky notes. I'm not pulling a ton of smoky notes at this point. I don't know if they're going to come out. That clay is much easier to taste now than it was just 10 minutes ago when we first popped it open. So maybe, but I'm not getting that. Some of my other favorite Beaujolais I've had a real quality almost of tumbled broken granite. It's from a different subregion though, which we could drink later. But anyway, let's move on back.
I have a question about tasting notes real quick. So when you mention stuff like tumbled granite or violets or things like that, like what is the best way to train your palate or to like know what stuff smells like? Because I don't know what violets smell like aside from like any other flower to differentiate that.
The best way to do it, and this was a piece of advice that I was given 5 years ago, and you've seen me do this. I smell things when I'm walking around. I go and I smell them. And if I see broken rocks, I will go smell those broken rocks, because that's the majority of what you're smelling there. You can also kind of extrapolate into taste later if you don't want to lick the rock. I do know enophiles that will lick the rocks because they want to train their palate into what it is. No,
there are animals like peeing on things outside. I don't want to lick the rocks.
That would be a different kind of thing. You know what? There are certain
smelling is different.
There are wines that have they sometimes refer to as fig leaf. I call it fig leaf because I grew up with a fig tree in my backyard.
Oh, right.
That smells like cat pee. And so that's code for cat pee. There are wines that smell like cat pee.
Can we never taste any of those in this? I would really appreciate that.
All right, I'll skip those wines.
Okay, thank you.
Let's jump back over to the map.
Okay.
I'm the map. Okay, so we Elizabeth actually found where we were, which is really cool.
It did.
Oh, and
Right there.
yeah, one thing that will come into play, and I want to point this out while we're here. Do you remember when we were drinking the Iguigal from the Southern Rhone?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about the Mistral, which is, you know, the winds that blow up this area. So the Mistral winds go all the way through here. Where you see it, it actually goes, it runs the entire length here. So those actually do play into this wine as well, and we'll cover why. Well, Elizabeth already did such a great job covering where we are. So here's Beaujolais down near Lyon and Paris. So you see Champagne, which is way up here, is much closer to Paris. And then actually jumping back, you know, just going back to where we have tasted. Do you guys remember the Chablis that we drank? Just to put it into perspective, that was the Chardonnay that was not oaked.
Yeah.
That was from here. So here we've run here all the way up to here. Actually, the very first wine tasting, no, second wine tasting was the rosé from Provence. So, all right. So here we are within Beaujolais, the Morgon right here in the center, one of the largest, and production within the Morgon tends to be the most highly rated within Beaujolais. If I were to give a guess as to why, it's because it's the most hearty and masculine of styles, which I think translates into the others can be really light and feminine and which is delicious and nothing wrong with that. But I think overall people like something a little richer, heartier. And that would be my best guess as to why that would be the case. They're all great.
So can I ask you what may be a really dumb question, but are these regions, like how they're named and everything, is that specifically just as far as wine production goes, or are they also called that geographically? Like if I'm sending a letter to this place, am I sending a letter to Morgon?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Here's the thing. In this case, yes.
Okay.
Morgon is the name of the major city within Morgon.
Okay.
So they named it after the city. So in this case, yes. And by the way, up here is Juliennes. That's my second favorite. So good. And this one, the Régine, Régine is the newest one. In the 1980s, they just added this one. So I have more ugly vineyards.
Gosh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a castle.
Right? Isn't that absolutely gorgeous? Let's see. We talked about.
So this is not one of those arid places.
This is not. This is. This actually looks a lot like Chablis. It reminded me of it, which is one reason I thought to mention it, because Chablis was all about rolling hills and limestone. The soil is different here, but it does have that similarity of rolling hills. One of the challenges for Beaujolais in establishing themselves as a style of wine garnering respect is that Beaujolais is very widely known, at least in the United States, but I think it kind of ran around the world for a while, though it is dying back, for Beaujolais Nouveau release. And Beaujolais Nouveau is literally, it was just this, evidently it was not nearly as big a deal in Beaujolais as it became, like, because marketers thought this would be great. We'll tell the Americans this is a huge deal and everyone drinks the Beaujolais Nouveau. It's kind of like an Oktoberfest for wine. And they would take young Beaujolais, it hadn't even finished fermentation, and they would all drink it. So it was very low alcohol and lots of sugar was left. So it's just a very sweet, you know, it's kind of like drinking pink Zinfandel or something like that. You know, it was just a sweet, bubble gummy kind of thing to drink, and which is fine, like have fun with it. But people weren't respecting it because they were just thinking, oh, that's just that sweet stuff, you know? Yeah. And so that's something that Jean-Marc, for example, is really trying to fight against. All right, and so I want to. One of the things that also makes it, I think, a little bit of a challenge when you get into Gamay drinking. So getting into Beaujolais drinking is, like I talked about, the wide variety of styles. So these wines are complementary to many different types of food, but the Gamay grape can taste all kinds of different ways. And you guys are going to love this reaction in a second. So they can taste, so here we have the more intense style where we've got kind of black cherry and some nice tannins. And I mentioned a lot of them can be much more to the kind of, you can go all the way to the strawberries and beyond that to like a cranberry roses style, depending on where they're grown and how the grape is treated. And then there are the very natural styles. Do you remember the very first wine I brought home for Thanksgiving from Tipple's when we first bought it in 2016?
Not even a little bit.
Do you remember? It was called Extremis, and it tasted like you were licking the wine off of a horse.
I do remember that. Yes. Okay.
Yes. Yes, that was Beaujolais.
Okay.
Which I think you'll agree tastes nothing like this. By the way, that other wine is considered to be a very important and excellent wine. It's just not for everybody. It's a pretty extreme example.
Better now because I've tasted so many now that I think I have a better appreciation for those more challenging French specific wines. But at the time, no.
Yeah, I'd say you definitely would do better.
Yes.
Yeah. That one's kind of one of those sommelier wine geek special kind of wines, and it's made to be that way. It's unfiltered completely. It's raw, and it honestly, it tasted like, oh, that's a very nice wine that you poured onto a horse and then licked it. It had a really horse barn quality to it.
Is Beaujolais the one that goes to horse barn like or I know because we've talked about horse barn before. So what other ones do like horse barn taste?
Burgundian Rouge, so Pinot Noir from Burgundy, that can do that. And Hermitage and Crozet Hermitage, which is Syrah.
Okay.
So the Syrah, so we drank from the Southern Rhone before, which was a red blend with lots of Syrah in it. The Northern Rhone is 100% Syrah. And I had one just today, which is one of my favorites. And the horse barn does blow off, and then it tastes like, which is my favorite part. It tastes like bacon, like peppered bacon with stewed plums. It's really, really, that's a great wine. Yeah. So we'll probably get to Crozet Hermitage because I do love those wines. They're fantastic. But you do, after like 10, 15 minutes, that it started out a little horse barny, and then it blew off, and then it was just so good. It was a little distracting in the beginning.
So it's just a matter of aerating?
Usually, yeah. Usually it will blow off, and that quality will diminish at the very least.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and jump back.
All right.
All right. Next one, please. So I actually already said this. Rolling hills, similar to Chablis, which it reminded me of as you look at that kind of valley-ish effect, and it runs across there. And there's a little hamlet right there, which looks like a beautiful place to. Is Belle going to start singing through the streets and look at the baker? Here comes the baker, like always.
From Beauty and the Beast, Disney, if you guys didn't get the reference.
So I mentioned the winds that come through there. So they have these great moulins au vent, windmills. So, and here it is. So we mentioned this before, the function of that area is they can get moisture, which, but it doesn't turn into mold because the wind is constantly drying it out. So you have that constant air movement, which is incredibly important. And also air movement thickens skins to give more character. So if you have a southern facing vineyard, you're going to be where the wind is hitting your grapes more. So you're going to get a more robust wine, thicker skins. So that type of thing. And the soil here, fast draining, volcanic in nature, granite, clay, and blue volcanic rock. And the volcanic rock, in addition to the clay, the volcanic rock has iron oxide in it. So it has that red clay effect, which we're all tasting, which I'm super psyched that everybody could taste.
Do you want me to go to the next one or?
No, I think this is the last one of my things, so I'm going to talk about this a little bit. Soils, the Côte de Pie is the subregion. Côte de Pie is the subregion that we're drinking from within Morgon. Like I was saying, that it's an area that's gets a little more wind, and it tends to create the most robust. So within Morgon, which is one of the most robust, Morgon and Julianus tend to be the most robust. We're in the most robust sub-region of the most robust region. So here we have the beefiest guy in the bunch.
So like I'm looking at these grapevines, and sometimes you see in vineyards they have the strings stretched across, and they have to give them those to grow on. These, it looks like they're so thick they don't need that, but is that really why they don't need it, or is it just a different way of growing? Or
it's just a different way of growing.
Okay.
Yeah, you can just choose what to do.
Okay.
There are some places in Spain where they just let them be mounds.
Okay.
And then other places use the lines.
Mounds, like a bush?
Yeah, like a bush. They're just like round these piles of bush. And then so it just depends on how they what they want to do.
Okay.
Yeah. Those look like those vines have some years on them. With
yeah, that's what I mean.
Those
are robust, thick vines.
Right.
I mean,
right. So let's go ahead to the next one.
Okay.
All right. So here is the tasting room and the vineyard. It's you look at it, it's a lovely place, but fairly quaint. Well, that actually plays into it. The winemaker, Jean-Marc Burgaud, is the winemaker. To this day, he's completely in charge of it. He began in 1989, and he only has 47 acres that he works. And he's never expanded and never intends to, because he literally tends it directly himself.
Oh, wow.
And obviously with some help, but
Sure.
But he said any more than that, he feels like he couldn't personally control what happens. So he feels he personally controls what happens to all of his grapes.
Wow.
Yeah. He's constantly pushing to make Beaujolais that are not just great Beaujolais, but great wines, which you can see in his ratings. They're exceptional. And here we are. We're talking about this is a $23 bottle of wine normally for 94 points. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Then he uses no chemical fertilizers or insecticides, but he also has no plans to actually ever become certified as organic. Or
because then you
biodynamic.
have to stop for a year.
And he honestly says, look, I'm going to do what's best for my land no matter what, and I don't want anything taken off the table. So
okay.
It's he just feels a lot of personal, he has a lot of personal investment in exactly what they're going, and whatever needs to be done, he's going to do, but he does tend to be sustainable, biodynamic, and organic.
Okay.
So all right, let's go to the next one. And I think that's going to be him right there. There's the man. So I think the guy makes beautiful wines. Here's to you.
How old is he? He looks pretty young.
Well, I don't know how old that picture is.
Because it started, okay, that's true. Because in 89, that was 30 years. Well, I guess he could be in his 50s if he started.
Yeah, he might have started in his 20s.
Yeah.
Could be. Let's go ahead.
How many different wines does he make?
Not many. He makes about 3 or 4. Right now, the only one we can get from him is this one.
Okay. I was just wondering, with 47 acres, like how many you can.
He has a couple of different areas where he grows a little bit of white and that kind of a thing. I've actually had over the years a few Beaujolais Blancs, which is Chardonnay.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
So, but and they were delicious. They were great, but they're not common. And so he does make a few wines, but this is the only one that is in the state of Florida.
Okay.
And it is no longer in the state of Florida. Evidently, I bought him out. So.
Oh, okay. There you go.
We bought them all. Let's go ahead and jump back to the camera.
Oh, okay.
There we go. All right. Now that I've kind of gone through his winemaking style, where it came from, any additional thoughts from anybody before we move on to discussing kind of the ratings and that kind of a thing? Any new flavors?
Why is the wine relatively cheap?
It's a good question.
That a lot of that, I think, my opinion on that is that it's part of what's holding the region back is that these cheaper and kind of the lack of mystique for that region is known for cheap wines, and so people won't buy. They tend not to buy expensive ones, and so I think they're just being held down by history right now.
Okay.
But what you can see, it's a great wine. And
Mhm.
especially Americans love fruit-driven wines.
Mhm.
I mean, this is arguably one of the best opportunities the French have to really come into the American market is kind of a beefier version of this, because I understand the more feminine versions may not make it as far, but this guy could, it has some, because of that nice kind of plummy and blackberry, there's a Merlot-ish kind of,
Mhm.
quality to this guy. And I would think it could do really well.
Sure.
But I think it's just part of it is there's a lack of history of high-end Beaujolais.
Jeff, I got a question.
Mhm.
Is that similarly the reason why there's no mention of Beaujolais on the bottle at all?
Oh, yeah.
This is Burgaud.
It's interesting because they just kind of skip the bigger and go right down to Morgon and Côte d'Épée, which are the more,
Yeah, so they've got Burgundy for the large region. So, or Burgaud. No, it's Burgaud.
Yeah,
I'm
they don't
not
mention
saying it
Burgundy
correctly.
or Beaujolais.
Burgundy's on the
which is-
back.
Wow.
It's a red Burgundy on the, somewhere I saw that.
Red Burgundy wine.
Red
There it
Burgundy
is,
wine.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
It's interesting that, but they jump right past it down into Morgon.
Yeah.
I don't know if they just,
is that the standard recognition of what people recognize a Beaujolais? No one's going to pay a higher price for a Beaujolais.
you're right. It may literally be because they were like, well, let's leave the name Beaujolais off and just
Yeah.
go with a red Burgundy.
But, yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
then
think,
just say Morgon and completely skip it.
yeah, I think maybe that's even a case in point, right? Yeah, Dave, that's a good point with what I'm saying. So they probably chose to do that on purpose because they certainly had room on the label. I mean, it's a nice, simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually worried about that when I first went to go grab it because I was like, oh, is this even the right one? Because I was like, this looks like the right one, but I don't see Beaujolais anywhere on this bottle. So
Right.
I literally Googled it to be like, is this the same thing? Is it like is this like a region versus a grape thing? But
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the grape is Gamay, you said, so
Mhm.
that's
Right. Yeah. And I rarely see anything just labeled Gamay, though I have seen a few high-end producers in the United States over in the Pacific Northwest. Usually they'll make some Gamay. It's really good.
I have a question. Well, sorry. When we were in the store this weekend, we thought we saw this exact same wine, but with a different label on it. Was that?
Did they change the label?
No, it's a different Morgon Beaujolais that I carry.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So I have another one that's from the same sub-region, just a different producer.
Okay.
Yeah, and that one's really good too. It's excellent. But I wanted to, and this guy had the kind of the special ratings. The other one's a small producer, and it's one of those, they're so small they haven't really gotten
They
ratings.
haven't asked for it.
Not that they don't deserve them, but it's always nice. I was like, when you delve into a region, if you can just beef it up with a little outside assistance to
Sure.
to show that it's good stuff.
So this is, and I guess it's going back to something you said already, but when we've talked about like in the past, I guess the French were very critical of Californians for doing a single grape production. But this is a single grape production, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's more of the winemakers from Bordeaux, because Bordeaux was all about blends, right?
Okay.
And the Californians were using grapes from Bordeaux.
Oh, okay.
But then, so
and then go.
whereas they weren't making Gamay, they were, here you have these great houses in Bordeaux making blends of Cab Franc, Malbec, and Merlot. And then you have the guys run over to California and say, oh, here's one that's just only Cabernet Sauvignon. And like, what do you didn't balance that with any of the other, what is wrong with you? Yeah, that was what they were.
So that's why they were upset that they weren't making it the way that they had established how to make it.
Right. And they legitimately thought that won't be as good.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, a lot of times they have a point, even though now the Californians are making it up with some incredible red blends. But you do see red blends. It's become a very powerful category. And,
Oh, sure.
it's kind of after, because really
I love a red blend.
early on, it was all about the single varietal, and
Mhm.
a red blend. Are like, oh, what is that all about? Red blends, and then
In American wines.
in American wines.
Mhm.
And nowadays, of course, the red blend sells every bit as much as the Cabernet Sauvignon, which is still the #1 seller, but not by as huge a margin. Red
Okay.
blends, there's a ton of that. And Americans love their Pinot now. So
Wasn't the vines in Bordeaux from California? Because weren't they lost? The vines in Bordeaux initially were damaged by insects, and then
Colossus.
actually they were reestablished with California vines.
it's it wasn't so much that they had to get California vines, but they had to get rootstock from the United States. And then
They grafted
they
it.
grafted them
Mhm.
together. So in order to save them, they then had to graft their vines onto rootstock
So
from the United States.
we have some new people. You may
Mhm.
want to explain that because
Okay.
I know that
Sure. So Dr. Frigger is talking about the phylloxera infestation that affected the world. So shortly after produce from the southeastern United States began to run around the world, they brought with them, especially from the grapes, this little aphid. It's a little bug. It's a root aphid called phylloxera. And it landed in Europe, and none of it never existed there before. And they just thought that the European grapevines were the most delicious thing ever, and went to killing them all.
Mhm.
And they were just siphoning off all the nutrition from the root. And they really, at the time, vine grafting technology did not exist. That was not a thing. And they were really worried that wine production in the world was going to be destroyed from the phylloxera infestation. Phylloxera has existed in the southeastern United States evidently for a long, long time, but no one was growing wine here. It was just when the colonists finally got here. So, but then in Texas, a botanist discovered the ability to graft. And so they were able to take grapevines from the southeastern United States that were immune to phylloxera and transport them all around the world and graft these older or these existing growth of whether it's French wine or, Greek or Spanish, not so much Greek because they were immune almost.
Right.
But anyway, wines throughout the world, they now grafting to this day, grafting is the standard method of protecting your wine grapes from phylloxera, because phylloxera is still around.
Right. So it was this phylloxera resistant root
Mhm.
grafted to the older vines.
The older vines, right.
Yeah.
Or cuttings that they made fresh from these older vines.
Right.
So it ended up being a hybrid in that way, but it's like, even to this day, when people establish really nice, say Chardonnay growth in California, they're still bragging about getting cuttings from France.
Huh.
Yeah.
Jeff, what about New Zealand and Australia and like South America? Did they have to deal with the phylloxera or?
Yes, they did.
especially for-
It went all the way around the world. The only countries that had some immunity were Chile, just because they protected themselves and wouldn't allow anything in that they thought could have phylloxera. So Chile never had a phylloxera infestation, and Greece largely had no phylloxera infestation because phylloxera can't live there because it's just so rocky and dry. Phylloxera prefers a nice soil to live in. And so anyway, so the Greek wines and the Greek old vine Greek wine is old.
Oh yeah.
Because
When we were
they
drinking
didn't
that.
have that infestation over there. There are a few places in Spain that are so arid that they didn't get phylloxera as well.
When we were drinking from the Canary Islands, was
Canary
that one of
Islands
them?
were largely safe from phylloxera
Okay.
just because they're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
They're in the middle of the ocean. So. But yeah, it was vastly by far the vast majority of the world's production was affected by phylloxera.
So the southern United States caused it and fixed it.
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, at least we fixed what we broke. Sorry, we didn't know we had the phylloxera.
Yeah.
So let's jump back on to the, we'll go through the ratings real quick.
Okay.
So here we have, this guy was judged to be an outstanding wine, superior character and styles. So we often bounce around in the 90s. Certainly 90 is pretty common for us. 90, 89, 91. So here we are, one that's kind of an outlier, right on the upper end. I think to me, to assess it, you would have to have had more Beaujolais in order to say, oh yeah, that one's a 94. I think part of this, because remember we talked about, I think it was last week, how much of the assessment is based on judging it versus others of its kind, and how much of it is just that this is a great wine that I'm enjoying. And the truth is it's a mesh of both. And to me, what makes this one a 94 would be, you know, that I'm imagining in their minds, is because he's comparing it to other Beaujolais, in addition to enjoying it empirically. So from my point of view, I would say just empirical, I definitely enjoy this wine. Like, I think it's a very delicious wine. I would give this guy a 90. Because I've had some other Beaujolais, I would then give it a higher rating. And I get the 93s and stuff because I've had enough Beaujolais to say, oh yeah, this is a world-class Beaujolais. What are your thoughts on that?
I haven't had enough Beaujolais. I like the wine, but I haven't had enough Beaujolais to compare it to the others. So because I like it, I would say like, okay, 90, 91.
Right.
But I just don't have that comparison.
Yeah. So you would agree with me that to consider buffing it up all the way up to that 94, you would want that ability to judge it against others of its kind, right?
Like, I feel like I've had enough California Cab that I could judge that compared to others. But with this one, I mean, I've had very few. So I don't know how you guys feel.
Yeah. What do you guys think?
So it brings up a question for me. I've never judged, I've never thought about scores in relation to vintages themselves. Like you said, well, it's a 90 compared to other styles, other grapes,
other varietals, right?
Other varietals. Thank you. But compared to other Beaujolais, it makes it a 94. And I've never thought about that in comparison within the varietal. Is that a standard in the scoring?
Well,
I don't know that we've talked about it that way before.
Right. Like one of the things.
Are there 4 or 5 things that the people who score the wines look at?
No, and that's one of the things that we talk about with that. The thing with scoring is it's basically self-created by these people. There's no official third-party group that has established certain specific scoring guidelines. So these guys, like Wine Spectator, created their own guidelines in their own design. You know, Wine Enthusiast, their own. James Suckling, his own. Jeb Dunnick, Willie Wong. These guys are basically, they've created it because of their vast knowledge of wine and the vast amount that they've tasted. And they do have amazing palates, and there's no doubt. And they've done an outstanding job for something that is so difficult, because it is this sensory perception, and there's a significant subjective quality to it.
There's no like objective rubric standard that it should live up to. Like if we're, because I know we've talked about dog shows in the past. So if we're looking at a dog show, there's a standard that the breed is being compared to. And maybe in the breed, you know, when you're judging just one breed, you're, you know, comparing them to each other to see which one's the best. But I mean, there is a standard that you're comparing it to. But with this, there's no standard rubric to go. There
are unofficial. And then
but there's none that the wine industry has said this is what we're using.
Right, because otherwise you might say, look, if a Cabernet Sauvignon is supposed to be rated 90 or above, it needs to have X effect of tannins and X flavors, and you need to have cedar and lavender, or you don't. But because there's this terroir difference depending on where you're growing Cabernet. So let's say almost all Cabernet of high quality is going to have significant tannins. That is something we know. But what equals significant tannins? And so that's where it gets back and forth a little bit.
So it is subjective based on these wine critics. They have, like what we were just talking about. You've tasted enough Beaujolais that you can compare it to the other Beaujolais. I haven't.
Right.
But they have. So they're thinking of, first of all, do I like it?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then they're comparing it. Okay. How would it stack up compared to what I've tasted previously?
Yeah. So where it would be different from dog shows is, I don't know if they want to see us instead of continuing to see this,
okay. We can stop this.
But where it would be different from dog shows, I guess, would be, where they're judging to a standard of like, these are Doberman pinchers and they should have this, this, and this going on, right? With wine, there's also an aspect of, do I like Doberman pinchers?
Okay.
And then, is this an excellent Doberman pincher? That kind of a thing. So, so they start with, is this a delicious wine? And then they go into, how does it stack up compared to substantial norms? But those norms can differ per area. So if you are in California and you're in Napa and you're making a Cabernet Sauvignon and you have a Cabernet Sauvignon that has like a cedar quality and a lavender quality, boom, totally normal. That makes sense. But you may have a really excellent cab from Australia. And the thing they would have in common would be like, oh, excellent structure, big tannins, cherry component. But then all of a sudden in Australia, you're most likely going to have a eucalyptus component to it.
Oh, right.
Which is not present in California.
Because of the terroir.
Right. Except that there are some places in California full of eucalyptus trees. So anyway, that's why there's no like written down, these flavors are the ones, because of that terroir and that change.
But there's certain characteristics that they would expect to have, the full body, the tannins, all of that, but the specific flavor profile will change.
Yeah, for example, if you have a cab that has almost no tannin, it's never going to be highly rated because cabs are supposed to have tannin, and it doesn't mean they have to for you to enjoy it. I'm not saying that. But if it's going to get a high rating, it's going to have some significant tannins. There are certain things that are just going to be that way. Whereas Merlot can get much higher without as many tannins. It's not expected. It's not part of the style. A long answer, but it's what I do. Okay.
Yeah, Dave, to me, it's sort of like with like untapped ratings is I try to, one, they are largely just ratings for myself. So how much did I even like this? But I also try to give that a little bit of like a weight, like grading on a curve a little bit to be like, how much did I like this versus like, I had a Pilsner the other day that I was like, this wine is amazing. But Pilsners for me are like, oh, they're good.
Right.
So I gave that a little bit of a bump because I was like, this is like one of the best Pilsners I've had.
Sure.
So I try to weight those in relative to what I would expect out of that beer.
Right.
For everyone else, Untapped is a beer rating app to provide you context.
Right. Good call. Thank you, Robin.
Robin.
But you're right. And then when it comes to that, because there are a couple of places online for wine that are similar to that. Vivino, I think, is one of them.
Yeah.
And you're right. And the good thing about these is they're judging them versus a kind of an established standard, where like Chris was talking about. Chris is one of the better reviewers, like that. And because he took style into account, because the thing is, you can be on Untapped or Vivino, right? And you can have somebody, and I've seen this, where they drank a Hefeweizen, which is supposed to have notes of banana and clove. And they'll be like, this beer was disgusting, 0 stars. It tasted like banana and clove. And you're like, but it's supposed to. Yeah. And like, I understand it's not for you, but it's not a bad Hefeweizen. And now they have like a 1-star rated in with it.
Yeah, that's not fair.
So, right. Yeah. So breaking that part out is where I think the value comes from, where don't believe 100%. Don't just automatically throw your weight in with ratings. But at least when they're professional ratings, they're always going to be at least as good as Chris Dial. Let's jump in and go back to the thing. And next one. Okay, so let's see here. Here we have, we're kind of right in the middle of the growing area again. So here's France. We're right about here. So getting a little bit north, but of course this line is creeping north all the time with the changes.
But it looks like it's like in the same latitude with the top tip of Maine.
Yeah, you look. It's amazing how far north, like because it's down about here. So I mean, you're talking about the very top of Maine. You're getting into Nova Scotia and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta love that Nova Scotian wine. With all the rain they get in Nova Scotia, they're gonna need a whole lot of wind to keep those grapes. So,
What other places do Gamay grapes? I don't hear much outside of France.
almost no one. That is one of the ones. There's a little bit done in the Pacific Northwest. I'm seeing now. But I am seeing very little other than that. I did find out today that one of my favorite little geek wine producers in California has a Gamay, and I thought, oh, really? So, but you're right, Brenda. Almost no one. You know, like you're talking about where lots of the French different wines. Pinot Noir is obviously everywhere. Chardonnay is everywhere. You know, Cabernet Sauvignon, Malbec, Merlot is everywhere, and those are all original, you know, to the French. But Gamay, very little done outside of Beaujolais. There was like a little bit I'm seeing from the United States, but it's pretty much, if you want to drink Gamay, you've got to go to Beaujolais in the whole world. No one else has picked it up. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to show you guys this one thing that I found, which we were talking about old vines in that picture earlier. I just thought this was really kind of neat. I came across this here. They're trying to save the old vines in Lodi, California. They basically, as the vines get older, they do keep producing better and better wine. But at a certain age, they begin to produce fewer grapes, which is why they're producing better wine. But the wine, because of the pressure to just make more and more money, the wineries sometimes are tearing them out once they get beyond a certain age. So they basically, when they're young, the quality of the grape is lower, but the amount of grapes they're producing is higher. So they let it get to at least 6 years, but then when it hits, I think it was around 40 years, they begin to produce fewer grapes, but higher and higher qualities. But because they can make less wine from it, the wineries are beginning to judge, too bad. I know the wine is amazing, but I need to make more money because I need to make more bottles. And they're tearing these out. So there's an organization in Lodi, California, trying to save the oldest vines and get people to, and basically help them so that they can continue to use those. Great shirts. Actually, I sent you
did you?
I sent you an email a couple of weeks ago saying I want one of the shirts for Christmas. It's really cool.
I did not get that. You need to send that to me again.
Okay. Anyway, so it's savetheold.com. I just thought it was really cool. I'm just going to buy some of the merchandise because I think it looks awesome and it also helps them. So I'm not even just throwing money at it. I'm getting something in return that I'm definitely going to wear. So I love their styling, and I kind of love the whole idea of, let people get in there and support the people that are going to produce some truly outstanding Lodi wine.
Sure.
I'd love to see Lodi be more than just the warm growth volume producer in California. I think they could be more.
Where is it in California?
It's inland. So I almost want to just pull it up. It's hard to describe.
Okay, well, you can share that with us next week.
I'll just pull up Lodi later on. But anyway, so I thought that was kind of fun. I wanted to share something completely different with everybody. And
virtual wine tastings too.
The what?
They do virtual wine tastings too.
Oh, do they?
Oh, nice.
Yeah, very cool.
Oh, good. Harriet already found
Yeah,
it.
the absent just voice from beyond.
Yes.
Harriet.
There she
I have
is.
my phone here. I pulled up the website and bookmarked it, so I have it.
Yeah. So
Oh, fantastic.
the
Yeah,
save the old is about the shirt, not the wearer, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You're too young to worry about that.
That's hilarious.
It's amazing
Great,
he's still alive after all these months.
Yeah, it's the wine.
That's great. So next week's wine, we're going to head back to one of our earliest, I think it was our third wine tasting with South Africa, back to South Africa. So we're the spice route Shakalaka.
I love that.
I like that name.
That's one of my favorite wine names to say. There's Shakalaka, and then there's Buchenhoekskloof, which, by the way, Buchenhoekskloof is also South African.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I was
So,
going to guess maybe German with that.
Um,
Hootskloof,
Buchenhoekskloof.
sounds kind of German.
It's Dutch.
Oh, okay. Well, that
and
makes sense. South Africa.
Yeah, the South African names tend to be Dutch. So
course.
anyway, really nice red blend. Like our previous red blend, it's a blend. It's got a lot of stuff in there that we don't drink a whole lot of. This guy is Mourvèdre. So that's from France. Syrah, France. Carignan, originally from France. Grenache, France and Spain. By the way, the Spanish claim that Garnacha precedes Grenache.
Okay.
The French do not agree.
Of course.
Europeans not agreeing on
What?
something?
And Tanat, which is Tanat to be missed. Oh, we haven't done a Tanat yet, have we?
No, I don't.
No, we haven't.
Well,
Oh,
I
yeah.
love tonight.
Okay.
Oh, they have.
Oh,
a
yeah.
Storm
Oh, yeah, there's
Point.
the
That's
Storm
what
Point.
that was
Yeah.
the
The Storm Point was the
right.
previous one, and then this is the Shakalaka. We're gonna, and then it ends with Petite Syrah. This guy's bigger than Storm Point. Storm Point was almost like this really cool, flavorful Pinot Noir. This is a deeper, richer blend. So this guy's more beef, barbecue pork, spicy sausage, sharp and/or rich cheeses. And I hope you guys will join us and have some fun joining and running down to South Africa. And you see, by the way, the ratings on this guy, 89 points, which is good, as I say. There is nothing wrong with 89 points. So, and it's consistent again and again with these guys. So, big restaurateurs, these guys. Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting group that makes them.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's jump back to us if you don't mind.
Okay.
Well, this has been a pleasure. Actually, it's a super stressful week, so this is just kind of fun. Makes me happy. Hang out with everybody, drink some wine. Wednesday is like our playoff game at Tipple's because it's the day. Wednesday before Thanksgiving, so we'll be going nuts. We're ready for you. Anyone haven't come, by the way, the wine sale is on. So don't miss that if you need to load up. And we've got great wines. And I was thinking there was one other thing I was going to say.
Well, we can end the video unless people have any other comments.
Last comments
questions?
for the record. All right, well, let's toast and then we'll stop recording.
Right. All
Launch,
right.
everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you for coming.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.